family. So today I'm going to be talking about a brand new action RPG titled Immortals Fenyx Rising. You might have known this as, I think it was called Gods and Monsters, but actually Monster Energy Drink was like, no, you can't use that title because monster in the title? Nah. Anyways, that's dumb, but this is being published by Ubisoft, and it's going to go on all current consoles, like from Switch to PlayStation 4, and then also new consoles, PlayStation 5, brand new Xbox. It's going to be on the Epic Games Store and Uplay for PC. Keep that in mind, no Steam. And then it's also coming to Stadia, so it's a pretty big publishing by Ubisoft, but right before we actually talk about some of the mechanics and nuances of the game, I kind of want to go on a macro level and say that I think this is kind of a B game. I think this is kind of a cheesy, I'm not going to say low effort. No. I'm going to continue to talk the video, and I'm going to keep the hype alive. I'm going to talk about this game and gush about it a little bit, even though I haven't played it. A lot of other people have played it, and they said it's really good, but I will say that it's pretty obvious this is not like the really like strong first forward step in terms of presentation that we get from games like Outriders, a brand new looter shooter action RPG, or Godfall, a new looter hack and slash. There's a bunch of other games that have taken a more sincere and serious attempt, and obviously much more money in terms of the production and the advertisement. This is a game that it looks like it's a really cheesy, strange game, and in many ways you can just instantly tell that there's some budget cuts here and there. I mean, in terms of the story, it's just, generally it seems a more generic, it's just, mythological Greek content, basically. Yeah, we're playing as Phoenix, but it's, I don't know, the story is about gods, Greek gods, so yeah, you play as Phoenix, a new winged demigod on the quest to save the Greek gods and their home from apparently some dark curse. Oh my god, we're gonna, I don't know, take on mythical beasts, duh. You're gonna master powers of gods, so more or less it's gonna be somewhat generic, and the god that we're apparently gonna be defeating is Typhon. So basically the story is super generic. Monsters are gonna be, we've seen them before, and powers generally is not gonna be too crazy or ridiculously innovative, but what's gonna be innovative is like these really arcade and cheesy mechanics that kind of tie everything together, and I will elaborate a little bit more on that, even though I haven't played it, obviously. I just know that they exist because everyone else is kind of raving about this game just a little bit. Anyways, Immortals Fenyx Rising is, I think a lot of people are going to describe it as Breath of the Wild meets God of War. So a lot of people are calling it like God of the Wild because it is actually an open world kind of cartoon stylized game, but it kind of has like that spectacle fighter influence of like God of War. And some people might say like Devil May Cry, but obviously with that Western feel, Western touch. And then it's a Ubisoft game. It's open world, and who knows what they're going to do with the exploration and stuff. How many towers are we climbing? Hey, Breath of the Wild actually was straight up a Ubisoft game, let's be real. But Immortals, I think, is a game that, at first, I don't think I would have covered it. Even though I have actually been a champion of these spectacle action RPGs, or action RPGs that are genuinely action-packed. I think before I called them adventure action RPGs or something like that. Games like Dark Souls, Monster Hunter, and now recently there was a game upcoming that I really am championing is called Almighty Kill Your Gods. And I just watched a little micro documentary on Diablo, and when Diablo was created, its innovation with focusing on real-time combat for an RPG was revolutionary for the most part, and then tying the whole gameplay loop around just totally focused on simplicity, funneling into the story, just jump into it. More of a linear progression in terms of the story, but the RPG, the mechanics, the randomness, the loot, and then just focusing on action. That was so big that changed everything and basically defined the genre. And since then, we have had mostly copy and paste because this demographic, who I'm basically talking to and who is seeing the videos here, and who this game is being made for, is so hungry, very starved, actually. We just want more and more action RPG, and that's going to be the usual isometric grimdark looters that we have seen, actually. Stuff like Path of Exile, surely. But then a lot of people are really kind of exploring, obviously, games as a service, too. And then, there's some MMORPGs, and there's even some survival RPGs, and basically, we really want action RPGs of all kinds, and I think it's really awesome, though, that we're finally getting out of the cycle of the usual stuff, and definitely getting out of a cycle of just games as a service action RPGs, stuff like Godfall and whatever that's upcoming. But now we are getting kind of B games. We're also getting remasters like Amular, whatever, Return to Reckoning or something, Re-Reckoning. And I think that people are going to really enjoy this kind of stuff. And people are. I mean, I know for this game, people are. So here we go, guys. We're talking about a brand new spectacle action RPG that actually is going to kind of have a more streamlined and simplified item system. Like, you're not going to get tons and tons of loot, but the loot that you do get is going to be more impactful. As well, I don't think we're going to have a tremendous plethora of abilities and things and mixing and matching and ridiculous stuff like Path of Exile, but what we will have is going to be, you know, really impactful, spectacle-y style abilities, you know, giant Thor-like hammers, or I guess I should use Greek god mythology, but whatever. Anyways, you know, and type of abilities that, again, we might have seen previously, but there are going to be some nuances to the combat system, even though, okay, I will say, it does look, again, the game just looks cheesy in terms of art, stylization, story, all that. It does seem, you know, like you could very quickly say that this is just God of War and Breath of the Wild, but there are some small little tiny things here and there that actually really make it kind of exciting, and we will actually talk about that. But firstly, I want to say that I think it is because that this is a B game that it is being allowed to be a little bit more experimental. And even though, like, not everything has to be tied together to a very hyper-specific image, not everything has to be tied together to, like, you know, all these systems have to work with the games as a service monetization, or, you know, it has to be this and that. It just seems like this game is allowed to kind of breathe a little bit because it is a more weird and cheesy title. So yeah, I know it, you know, coming off, it looks cheesy, but I think it's going to be like the good cheese. If that, I don't know. There's a difference. Okay, there's a difference. Regardless, guys, you are going to be, you know, the itemization, the powers, stuff like that. All of it, I think, is really heavily tied to the items. So basically, you are going to be getting new items as you don't level, actually. As you play the game and as you progress, there's no levels. So, you know, it's definitely really focused on the spectacle fighter kind of influence, but you do get items, and those items actually will have new stats and things. So you're going to have, like, you know, new items from, like, Achilles or the different gods, again, very God of War, as you tackle, and there's going to be puzzles, and actually from some of the gameplay, it looks very similar to God of War. And of course, obviously, there is some Breath of the Wild influence there, as with the, well, actually, that's what they say, explore stylized open world. And oh man, actually, if you look at a map, it kind of gets vibes of Breath of the Wild, especially with the verticality, which kind of makes sense, actually, because we can fly, we can glide. Oh man, you know, I think, god dang, the parallels are actually really uncanny. Anyways, yeah, you're gonna meet people like Zeus, okay, Zeuses and Minotaurs and all that usual stuff. So I don't really need to explain really the world building at all, do I? We all know that, right? We all, like, went to school for the most, like, we've seen, like, other shows and read books, like, we know, like, it was definitely overused, but at the same time, you know, a lot of these tropes and a lot of the stuff allows this game to be produced very quickly. It's something that allows us to kind of jump into a world and understand it very quickly as well. So in terms of story, it's like we don't really need, like, you know, I don't know, 10 hours of exposition or tutorial Final Fantasy 13 so that we can actually get into a real game. Yeah, so I mean, you know, just jump right into the action. I think that's gonna be pretty cool. Now, to talk about some of the nuances that really, I couldn't play the game. So it's going to be other YouTubers basically saying this, but it's going to be just the small factors of, like, how stamina actually works in this game, how cooldowns actually operate, the style of combat, and nothing is ridiculously radical, you know? It's just all little fine tunings and kind of mergers from other style of games. Basically, God of War and Breath of the Wild. And, oh man, so when people say, like, Breath of the Wild, they're not just saying that it happens to be cartoon and open world, and it just happens to have puzzles. I mean, like, the way the game is designed is literally, like, some of the puzzles are just from Breath of the Wild, like, designed exactly like it. Now, they might technically be different puzzles, but you will be doing the same things. You will be putting balls into very specific little slots or whatever. You will be doing the gliding challenges and etc. They're just named different things, and they might technically be shaped differently, but yeah. As well, the fighting system should be very reminiscent of especially, like, the older God of Wars, God of War 1 through 3 probably. So combining those two and then also throwing in some experimental mixing and matching, I think is totally fine. I think it's totally fine. And then the fact that it also, once again, it has just, like, the most bland, generic kind of story to run through, and world building and backstory. And then also you can just clearly see the very just, you know, it's like the cheesy visuals. It's not exactly as Ghibli or inspired as something like Breath of the Wild. So we can see that, you know what, this is totally a B game. And that's actually totally fine, as long as it's good. Though, I mean, obviously, we're going to take points off for a little bit of a lack of uniquity ingenuity. You know, like we do like stuff like Breath of the Wild, even though that itself was very derivative. We do like stuff like the original God of War, which was a very unique take on the mythology and story, and its spectacle fighting was very interesting, especially since Western spectacle fighters tended to act and play a little bit differently. So it was kind of cool to have a little bit of an adult hardcore edge, which is, you know, it's more of like a Devil May Cry kind of an Eastern thing. So yeah, I think that this game is going to be kind of a merger and hopefully the best of both worlds. And even though it's going to come across as cheesy and totally a B game, that's absolutely fine for me. I think, you know, my favorite B game I always champion is a game called Dark Messiah Might and Magic, which was a stealth simulation type of game. It's from, you know, the developers who went on to make Prey and as well as Dishonored, and they originally made, really, in my opinion, the best, like one of the greatest games ever, but it's at the same time, it's a B game, you know? So it's totally fine. You can have, like, B games can be great. You just have to admit that, like, okay, the production's a little weak here, or it's like, yeah, the story, we've been there and done that, but sometimes it's those little tiny innovations, or sometimes it's just the glue. It's just the fact that they took these two things and put them together, and then you find out, oh shit, that actually makes it really freaking awesome. Yeah. So anyways, sometimes you have to actually play a game to review it. And I think in this case, if I were to just look at this without other people having played it before, I would have been like, wow, this is just a clone. But the fact that other people are talking about it and saying that it's good, sometimes guys, clones and, you know, these kind of copy paste style games, they can be great. I'm all for that. I've covered multiples of those on the channel. A lot of people are looking forward to a new one called Genshin Impact, which is also a Breath of the Wild mixed with like anime waifu collecting. So, you know, that's totally fine. I'm looking forward to that future, and I'm looking to see how people can explore these concepts. Because then again, originally when video games were really first being produced, it was from clones that, you know, little tiny changes could end up making an entire genre. So we'll see how this game fares, and we'll see how it pushes forward this new emergent spectacle action RPG genre that I'm really, really excited to actually jump into. Even though I'm being a little bit harsh, at the same time, I totally get how you can use tropes and generic mechanics and things to push forward what kind of really matters, which sometimes gets hidden in other games. So, much love, friends and family. That's all I got to say about Immortals Fenyx Rising, which is really weird title. But then again, they had to change it. What do you guys think in the comments below? Let me know. As soon as I get to play it, of course, I'll cover it. Much love. See you in the next one.